Yeah. Great, I think we're ready when you are, Scott.
All right. Will the meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission for Wednesday, May 17th, 2023, please come to order? This evening's meeting will be a hybrid planning and zoning meeting hosted in person at the Nathaniel B. Green Community Center, 32 Church Street, Guilford, Connecticut, Monocatuk Rooms, second floor, as well as virtually by Zoom. During this meeting, our procedures will be as follows. 1, when you first enter the Zoom meeting, you'll be in a virtual waiting room until the meeting host admits you. 2, please be aware that your camera, if you have one, and your microphone will be muted by the meeting host when you enter the meeting. You can turn on your camera at any time so that you can be seen by others when and if you choose to. In order to run an efficient and orderly meeting in this virtual environment, unless stated otherwise by the meeting chairman during the meeting host will keep everyone other than the commission members muted. You will still be able to hear everything said by the commission members, even if you're muted and or your camera is not on. There will be opportunity for public comment during public hearings, at which time public participants will be unmuted. 3, the secretary will read the call of the meeting as published according to Governor Lamont's executive order. 4, during the public hearing, the applicant will be invited to present the application, explaining to the commission and others present what is being requested. The meeting host will share all related documents on the screen as needed. In addition, all applications and supporting materials for each application on the agenda are available through the public meeting calendar page of the town website, www.guilfordct.gov, and also through a direct link on the planning and zoning page. 5, comments of town agencies will be read for each application if there are any, and there will be clarifying questions from the commissioners. 6, there will then be an opportunity for clarifying questions from the audience. Please raise your hand through the Zoom platform and wait to be called on and unmuted. As this public hearing must be recorded, it is necessary for speakers to identify themselves each time they speak by stating their name and address. After all clarifying questions are exhausted, those who wish to speak in support of the application will be asked to come forward, state their name and address for the record, and make a statement. Then those who wish to speak in opposition to the application will be asked to come forward, state their name and address for the record, and make their statement. 8, the applicant will then have an opportunity to address any questions or concerns raised by the public or commissioners. 9, once the public hearing is closed, the applicant is free to leave or remain for the balance of the public hearings and the regular meeting, during which the commission will try to reach a decision on each application. Each applicant will be notified in writing as to the decision of this commission and has a right to appeal to Superior Court if desired. 10, decisions of this meeting are available the day after the meeting by calling the Planning and Zoning Department at 203-453-8039 or by emailing planning.zoning@guilfordct.gov after 9 a.m. 11, all actions taken on applications tonight by the commission will be by roll call. All commissioners and staff will identify themselves for the record before speaking. Seated this evening are the following members who will please identify themselves. Commissioners Kevin Clark.
Here.
Bill Freeman.
Here.
Ted Sands.
Here.
Philip Johnson.
Here.
Sean Cosgrove.
Here.
Frank's not here. And I'm Scott Edmund. Alternates tonight are Jason Marchi
Here.
and Larry Rizzolo. I think Larry, you're muted.
Here.
So tonight, we haven't had Jason be a voting member for a while. So with Jason, you'll be voting tonight. Staff present are Jamie Stein, Town Planner.
Good evening.
Janique Morgan, Administrative Assistant in Planning and Zoning. Nigel Horn. This meeting will be recorded via the Zoom platform and made available on the town website for viewing. The secretary will now read the legal notice.
Coming right up.
Notice you hereby given that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Committee will hold a hybrid public hearing May 17, 2023 at 7:30 p.m. Draft zoning regulations amended. Zoning map. Attendees may join at the Nathaniel B. Green Community Center or via the Zoom platform by using the following link. Due to limited space, members of the public wishing to attend are asked to register with the Planning and Zoning Department. Copies of the draft regulations and maps are available for inspection in the planning and zoning office and on the town's website. Dial 203-453-8039 for assistance. Dated Guilford, Connecticut, this 25th day of April, 2023. Scott Edmund, Chairman.
All right. I entertain a motion to open public hearing.
Sorry, Scott.
Yes.
Apologies, there is a second.
Oh, second legal notice.
Legal notice, thank you.
Mr. Secretary.
Notice is hereby given. The Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a hybrid public hearing on May 17, 2023 at 7:30 PM. Attendees may join at the Nathaniel B. Green Community Center or via the Zoom platform by using the following link. Due to limited space, members of the public wishing to attend in person are asked to register with the Planning and Zoning Department. The following applications will be heard. Guilford Mill Inc., 110 Cherry Street, map 46, lot 59A, zone R1. Special permit modification for the installation of an electric vehicle charging station and 2 associated parking spaces. Copies of these applications are available for inspection in the Planning and Zoning office and on the town website at the screen. Via web connection and shall be heard. All written correspondence shall be submitted to planning.zoning@guilford.ct.gov 24 hours prior to the meeting day. Documents are available at the Planning and Zoning office, dials 203-453-8039 for assistance, dated at Guilford, Connecticut, this 25th day, April 2023. Scott Edmund, Chairman.
All right, now I will entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Scott.
All in favor to open? Yes. First item on the agenda. Anna Maria Vishnu Knapp application, extension was granted to the commission on May 5th, 2023. And they requested to table their application until our next meeting, which is June 7th, 2023. As if you were in attendance at the last meeting, there was a number of items that came up that we were looking for more information. Either we were or the audience was looking for more information on the application. So as a result, the applicant decided to table to the next meeting. So can I entertain a motion to table that item to June 7th?
So
So moved.
I beat your head.
All right, Jason Markey,
Yes.
Kevin Clark,
Yes.
Ted Sands,
Yes.
Bill Freeman,
Yes.
Bill Johnson,
Yes.
John Cosgrove,
Yes.
and I will yes.
Amy, does that extend our timeline?
The extension does.
So the applicant has granted an extension, which can last up to 65 days from Scott helped me out, from May 3rd. 65 days from May.
Yes, well, it says May 5th on here,
May
but
5th.
next item on the agenda, Guilford Mill Inc., 110 Cherry Street, map 46, lot 49A, zone R1. Special permit modification for the installation of an electric vehicle charging station and 2 associated parking spaces.
How do you want this set up? Where do you want it facing?
So the camera is over here. I don't know if Jamie, you might be able to bring up the map so that
I
everyone can
can,
see what we're
yes,
seeing.
I'm gonna do that.
So if you just project, you should be fine.
Okay, felt good. Well, good evening. I'm Attorney Robert Lightsey, 37 Boston Street here in Guilford. And what we're doing this evening is presenting to the commission an application to modify the existing special permit for the Guilford Mill Condominium Association for the purpose of installing 2 new parking spaces and an electric vehicle charging station. I guess I speak to that, but look at this. I'm not sure exactly how this works.
That works.
But that's what we will do.
Yep.
If you look at your screen, you will see a mapping of the area done by Eric Anderson's office, Todd Anderson being part of this. Todd being the engineer and the surveyor for this project. And I have on this map outlined in yellow what we have as the boundaries of the property in question. So you can see that very clearly. Now, within the boundaries, we have proposed to add 2 additional parking spaces simply for the purpose of being served by an electric vehicle charging station. Now, this will tell you very clearly where those parking spaces are. There are 2 in number up here in the northeast corner of the parcel. And right at the head of those parking spaces would be the charging station itself. The charging station is designed to be able to service 2 parking spaces. Obviously, the 2 vehicles being able to use those parking spaces for that purpose. With the application, we've also provided information regarding the actual charging station itself. Now, this is a Power Charge Energy Commercial Series charging station that is being provided by a company called Titan LED. And we have the Northeast representative of Titan LED on the screen here, not right now, but available if we have questions for him. So if we have questions, a gentleman by the name of Dennis Robb, R-O-B-B, will be available to answer those questions. Also here tonight, we have the president of the association, Attorney Peter Brown, and we have another member of the board of directors, Susan Leet, who also can be here to answer questions you might have with respect to the association and governance and so on and so forth. Now, this charging station will be for the unit owners of the condominium only. And that's the way it would have to be. Similar to if you have a state facility, and those members can use it and so on and so forth. But we have a situation where we have 8 unit owners. We have 1, I think, with the electric vehicle right now, just 1. Okay, and we expect more coming along, but they will be using those exclusively for that purpose. Now, we have 14 parking spaces for the project right now. And when we finish those 14, we'll still be there. What we're doing is adding 2 additional parking spaces so that we can accommodate the charging station. Now, the beauty of a charging station like this, you can always run a line and plug it into a 110 outlet. Charge your car if you had to. Something of this nature will charge your vehicle 8 times faster than any 110 outlet can do. And that is one of the reasons why we do this, besides the fact that it makes sense to start doing this now as we move into the 21st century. The particular document, the particular charging station, as I said, is part of your application. So when you take a look at the portions of the application that are appended to this, you'll see a fairly close description of what it is that would be installed there. And you'll have some of the technical specifications for it. Now, this is a pedestal mounted facility with 2, let's call them arms, I guess, 2 cords that come out from the facility, one of which is designed for one space and the other of which is designed for the other space. Now, Todd is not available tonight, but he's made it clear as to how the surface water from these 2 spaces would be managed. And they would simply be managed by sheet flow off the spaces into the existing drainage facilities on site, which are underutilized at this point in time. So there's plenty of access, plenty of volume available for these 2 little spaces. And during construction, we will be putting silt fencing out, of course, behind this particular area. So that we protect this portion of the Mill Creek development. I think that's probably about it. If you have questions, please ask them. But basically, it's a simple application to amend the existing special permit. Because the special permit is the manner in which the original condominium was established and designed. And for 2 reasons. Number one, to create the two spaces, and number two, to allow the installation of the charging station. That's a big plan to do. It's a good idea to do it. And we move along into this century.
Great, thank you. One question I have is, you're gonna be powering this through an underground conduit, I assume?
Yes.
Any questions from commissioners?
Just curious whether or not the association as a whole is paying for the electricity or individual charges as people charge their vehicle.
The individual charging, I'm glad you asked that. The logistics of use are really interesting in this kind of a thing. The user will use an app on the phone to access the system in the cloud that is hooked up to this facility. And you pull in, you've already designed your own methodology on your phone to get into the app. And once you're in the app, you then hit the right buttons, and it lets the machine know that you're ready to charge it up. You get out, you plug the machine into your car, you let it charge until it's charged to the way that you wish it, the extent that you wish to have it charged. You unplug it and you drive off. And that generates a debit to your credit card, and that's how you get billed. It's very simple to use. Logistics is very simple in this kind of thing. It's all in the cloud too. So when a user uses it, the association is also notified that it's being used. The association has to monitor all of this. And of course, there'll be reports and everything else that is involved. As we go through the usage of this, it'll become more familiar. This won't be the last GC.
Budget, oh my, Kevin Clark with the commission. Bob, I don't, did you say the area that you're proposing to put these in, is that currently pervious or impervious surface?
Currently, it is pervious surface.
It
becomes impervious.
Okay.
That's why Todd has designed this so that the sheet flow from it will be, it's going to be sloped a bit, so the sheet flow will come off into the existing system right here.
Okay.
And the system comes around like this, and when you get into the piping and so forth, when you get down here, it's always dry, even in the wet season. So we've got plenty of volume that can handle those two spaces, as Todd has.
So what's the percent increase in impervious surface?
I don't know.
Do you know what the existing impervious surface percent is?
I'd have to look at the existing permit, honestly. I mean, it's such a
It's tiny.
really de minimis in the sense of the total overall surface. I'd have to dig out the existing special permit. It's the size of the two of them. 20 by 10 or what is this? Yeah, each of them is 20 by 10, so it's 400 square feet of additional impervious surface.
And the size of the project you're talking about is relatively small. I'm just curious, did you give any thought to maybe keeping it pervious, but also having them be parking spots?
Say that again?
Could there be parking spots and actually be pervious surface? I know it's a small site. I know we're talking relatively small increase in impervious surface.
Well, right now their design is impervious surface. Yeah, I don't know if it makes any difference when you're hooking it up to.
Throwing it out there.
Vehicle
Yeah.
charging station, that kind of thing. But right now the design is impervious, yeah.
No, I know. Okay, I was just thinking you're trying to do the environmental thing with the EV, and then a little pervious surface underneath, and you're kind of completing the loop, but just. It's just thought, I'm done.
Appreciate it.
Jamie, do we have any memos from town staff?
We do not.
They were all informed and reviewed it. Great. Any other questions, commissioners?
I guess, I just think it would be important to know what the impervious surface coverage is now, what the regulations are. Oh, sorry.
No, they are not exceeding,
Okay.
impervious. Well, actually, it's a residential property. We don't really calculate that, but it is in the coastal area, and with Todd Anderson, we determined that it is not a coastal site plan because of the small amount of impervious.
Any questions from the audience? you're on the Zoom call, please raise your hand through the Zoom platform. Hold on.
Just one hand up there.
We do not see any.
None more.
Would anyone like to speak in support of this application? Would anyone like to speak in opposition to this application? Oh, somebody wants to speak. Hey, Todd. Please, yeah,
Good evening, everyone. I wasn't supposed to be on this meeting, but I am. I wanted to listen to the public comments about the regulation changes. But I want to speak on the impervious coverage areas of the parking spaces. We did a study of the drainage area that exists in the front parking lot there. And on our original design, we did not account for all of the stone that was around those galleries. So we redid the calculations, including that stone area. And we are still well and above holding the drainage for the storm surge from the increased impervious coverage. And also, I'd like to also mention that in residential zones, there is no impervious coverage limitations in the existing regulations. So we capture the stormwater for a 1-inch stormfall. And as Attorney Leachy stated, the outlet basin, I inspected that, and there is no indication that any water has ever gone out through that overflow structure to the town drainage, which finally leads into the river. We have great soils there, so that system seems that it is working perfectly, and the small increase in rainwater into it will have no impact at all. Oh, and I'm sorry, I didn't say my address. So for the record, Todd Anderson, Anderson and Associates, 1054 Boston Post Road in Guilford. But that is all I wanted to add. So continue on. Thank you.
all right, we'll move on to anyone that wants to speak in opposition to this application. Based off of all that, would anyone like to make a motion? Typically with special permits, there's a requirement for this to be 2 nights of public hearing. Although commission does have the opportunity to waive that requirement by a 3/4 vote. Would anyone like to make a motion?
So moved.
Second. So there's a motion to waive the second night of public hearing and a second. Any discussion? Okay, Jason Marchi,
Yes.
Doug Clark,
Yes.
Ted Sands,
Yes.
Bill Freeman,
Yes.
Bill Johnson,
Yes.
Sean Cosgrove. Yes. I will also vote yes. Anyone like to make a motion to close the public hearing on this item?
So move.
So moved.
Jason Marchi,
Yes.
Doug Clark,
Yes.
Ted Sands,
Yes.
Bill Freeman,
Yes.
Bill Johnson,
Yes.
Sean Cosgrove.
Yes.
And I will also vote yes. Once we get to our regular meeting, we'll vote on this item.
Thank you.
On this one before we do it.
We can amend the agenda to jump into a regular meeting to act on this item if you want. You'll make the motion.
I have a motion to amend the agenda to act on this application.
Second.
All right, second from Jason. Jason,
Yes.
Kevin Clark.
Yes.
Ted Sands,
Yes.
Bill Freeman.
Yes.
Bill Johnson.
Yes.
Sean Cosgrove.
Yes.
I will also vote yes. Would anyone like to make a motion related to this application?
Caught me off
I
guard.
wasn't ready for that.
Keeping me on my toes.
All right.
Jason, do you have it in your email?
Say what?
You have the motion in your email, sir.
Yeah, I have, one up on the screen from the, yes, I must have it. Yes, proposed motion, yeah.
Have at it, sir.
Want me to read it? All right, hopefully everybody can hear me. So this is proposed motion approval for 110 Cherry Street. Am I reading the correct one here?
Yes.
Okay, voted that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approve a special permit modification for the installation of an electric vehicle charging station and 2 associated parking spaces. The submitted plans include, quote, special exception site plan, end quote, Guilford Mill, Inc., 110 Cherry Street, Guilford, Connecticut, dated April 17, 2023, revised April 19, 2023, prepared by Anderson Engineering and Surveying Associates. 1 sheet. This application is approved with the following conditions. The applicant shall file with the town clerk an original copy of the special permit approval, parenthetical or parentheses, to be provided by the Planning and Zoning Department, end parentheses, and shall furnish written evidence to the Planning and Zoning Department that the document has been so recorded. 2, pursuant to state statute, this approval is valid for a period of 5 years following the date of decision until May 17, 2028. Upon petition of the applicant, the commission may, at its discretion, grant extensions totaling no more than an additional 5 years to complete all work connected to the original approval. And 3, if concerns are raised regarding erosion and sedimentation control, the applicant shall meet with the zoning enforcement officer and environmental planner to discuss potential solutions and prevention measures. This application is approved based upon a finding that it conforms with the Town of Guilford zoning code. This approval shall become effective 15 days after the legal notice of this decision has been published.
Thank you. Wait a second.
Second,
Kevin. Discussion?
pretty straightforward.
Yeah, well, it's also something that is going to be happening more and more as return relief mentions.
I think Ted had his hand up.
If they just put it in a regular parking spot, it wouldn't even.
We'll move on to voting. Jason Marchi,
Yes.
Kevin Clark.
Yes.
Ted Sands,
Yes.
Bill Freeman,
Yes.
Bill Johnson,
Yes.
Sean Cosgrove. Yes. And I will also a yes. That'll be your project. Thank you. All right, we're moving back into the public hearing. Next item on the agenda is Town of Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission application for adoption of proposed April 13, 2023 draft zoning regulations and amended zoning map. Before I hand it off to our presentation, I want to just mention a couple of things. The one item is that we're gonna put a hard stop at 10:30 for public comment on this item, if it gets to that point. We as the commission have the opportunity to extend this to a second meeting if we feel like it's needed, if there's that much public input. So if we get to 10:30 and we haven't heard from you yet, don't worry, we'll have another meeting and you can let us know that you were here and you have comments and we'll make sure you're first on the next one. So with that, I will take it away.
Great. Thank you, Scott. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending this evening. I am Town Planner Jamie Stein. I just wanted to take a few minutes to really extend my immense gratitude to the Guilford community and the many members that have worked very hard on many different civic and cultural endeavors here in town. It is my pleasure to serve for 22,216 residents of this wonderful town. And my staff and I have heard several questions, comments, suggestions, and concerns from a great diversity of you all, and we hear it on a daily basis, and we've heard it over the last year. I'd like to thank some people that I've never had an opportunity to interact with. Mr. Roy Ogren, who submitted our very first comment letter on the zoning regulations. I thank you for that, Roy. Mr. Russ Campaign, who has diligently reviewed and provided comments and critical feedback on the full set of regulations for well over a year. Mr. Keith Bishop, who has attended almost every working session that we've held over the past year. And we have. The regulations rewrite has been a 3-year process. And it's been challenging. During this time, we weathered a global pandemic and saw our time-tested methods of public engagement basically turned on their head. If you remember several years back, public engagement and just going out in public was not something that we did. But we persisted and we persevered and we have delivered to you a revised set of zoning regulations that not just attempt for greater organization and clarity, but also attempt to address the land use challenges of our time. Our zoning regulations have not been significantly amended for decades, and there were many areas that needed to be addressed. Of great importance is the affordable housing crisis that this country, state, and town are facing. Since April of 2022, we have been holding monthly working sessions on the proposed zoning regulations. I want to thank our zoning consultant, Mr. Glenn Chalder, for sticking it out with us from the very beginning. I want to thank the commission for your steadfast commitment in working with the public and hearing their concerns and to address them over the past 3 years. I want to thank our first selectman for his guidance and support. And most of all, I want to thank the planning and zoning department staff. It is really unheard of that a planning and zoning department is open Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4:30 p.m. It's very unique, but we are there, and I can promise you that every day, with whatever question you may have, you will be greeted with civility, a smile, and eagerness to help. So I ask that this evening during tonight's hearing, you conduct and offer your testimony in a way that is also civil and returns that gratitude. And we look forward to your constructive feedback to help us adopt a fully revised set of regulations. Thank you. Glenn, I'll turn it over to you.
Amy, thank you very much. Members of the commission. My name is Glenn Chalder, and as Jamie indicated, I've had the opportunity to work with the town on these regulations going back, believe it or not, to initially we started in the fall of 2019. To summarize tonight's presentation, I put together a PowerPoint to just kind of walk through the highlights of the regulations and set the stage for people who may not have had a chance to look at the regulations in there. So this again is the PowerPoint here overall. As Jamie indicated, for some time, the commission and the staff have been working on updating the zoning regulations in order to reorganize them, to try to make the regulations easier to use because things are going to be found in intuitive places. And that would help people accomplish things that they wanted to do by understanding what the regulations would say. The second thing was to clarify them, to try to use simpler language and phraseology to make it clear what was and was not permitted in the regulations. Then the third thing was to update the regulations to address important issues. Jamie mentioned a few of them, but also to reflect current statutes and case law so that the regulations are not only reorganized, but they're also brought into this century, I suppose. The public hearing tonight is being conducted as part of the process of adopting the regulations. As the chairman indicated, we look forward to your comments here tonight. And we need to continue the hearing to another date. We look forward to that opportunity as well, moving forward. Just in terms of a timeline, in the initial stages of the regulation, we conducted an audit of the regulations. We did a number of community meetings with people, asking them their experiences with the regulations, what they felt worked and didn't work. We looked at the ZBA agendas and applications to understand where and why people were applying for different types of variances, and developed a foundation to build from in terms of issues with the regulations. We're also working on the subdivision regulations, but during the COVID era, we essentially parked the regulations because we also need to update the town ordinance, and that requires the input of the Board of Selectmen. That hasn't happened at this point in time, so the subdivision regulations are not part of the material which is before the commission here this evening. During the COVID period, when public meetings and input and guidance wasn't as possible, we worked with staff on the regulations, the town attorney, to evolve the regulations and try to improve them. And then the 2021 to 2023 period, we've had 2 public input sessions to get community input and feedback. The town planning staff has done meetings monthly for the past year on different topics and issues that have been raised. The commission has been having working sessions, and this sort of brings us to where we are today as part of this process. So it's quite a bit of time and effort has gone into trying to improve the regulations. And still, as Jamie indicated, we're looking forward to your comment and feedback. Intuitively, the regulations are now broken into 4 main pieces. So in the future, if you're looking at the regulations and you think there's something you might want to know, you probably at least start by thinking about whether or not it falls into one of these 4 buckets. So the first one we're going to call regulatory basics. Next one is zones and uses, what's permitted where in Guilford. The third one are standards, things like parking, lighting, EV chargers, which we heard about, parking spaces, etc. And then across procedures for getting approval. So the first major section of the regulation, again, we're calling basics. Sort of the big picture things which we've been trying to accomplish here. We've added graphics into the definition to make it clear how building height is measured. Some people are visual rather than verbal. A picture is worth 1,000 words. So again, we're trying to help people visualize and understand what's allowed or permitted or not permitted by the regulations through the use of pictures. The definitions in zoning, the word principal and accessory are very important in terms of what's allowed on a piece of property and the accessory activities that go along with that. But in alphabetical definitions, accessory comes first and principal comes back in P, and you don't really get or understand the relationship between the two. We put them both together. We've used graphics here to indicate the difference between principal and accessory. And our hope and aim too is to help people visualize and understand what this means and how it would be used. We've also tried to clarify dimensional standards in terms of how those will work, etc. So those are some of the big picture issues which are addressed in the regulatory basics section. There's an introduction which identifies the statutory authority, basic premise of regulations, unless it's specifically permitted. The interpretation is that it's not allowed. Other regulations will be enforced, etc. So some people refer to this as regulatory gobbledygook, but it's important stuff that sets the basis and foundation for the regulations. The next major section is the words and terms, and this is where some of the graphics I showed earlier in the slides come along to share this information. All the regulations were comprehensively reviewed and updated. In certain situations, there were regulations in the definitions, which kind of muddied their interpretation. So we tried to get those out and put them in the right place in the regulations, etc. But essentially, they clean this up in terms of what's permitted and how. One of the issues that we dealt with here is that under the current regulations in Guilford, we have a regulation for what's called an interior lot. And interior lots might be undersized lots in a zoning district. And we provided some relief for those lots, not having to go to ZBA for variances for certain things. To now treat those as the zone standards, which are closest to the actual lot size of that lot. So in terms of side yard setbacks, you're not going to have big setbacks for a larger zone applying to a small lot. You'll have the setbacks for a lot of that size. And given the number of variances that went to the ZBA, we think that's an important step forward. The next major section of the regulations is zones and uses, and often this is the first place people will go to look. Can I do what I'd like to do in this zoning district? In terms of the big picture, we've identified use tables. So the first graphic on the left here, residential zones. Symbols are much like the Consumer Reports article, whether it's permitted by a zoning permit or a special permit or a site plan or how it might be, and how that is permitted in the different zoning districts. So if you have a property in the zone, you can look at the uses that are permitted. If you have a use you're interested in, you can look at the zones where it's permitted. So it has a lot of utility rather than trying to read through pages and pages of text. We've added some new residential provisions in to different ways to approach residential development in the future. address different types of housing. We've also, with the commission, consolidated what were 22 different business zones to try to make it more simplistic along the Route 1 corridor, the different goals and intentions for different areas to make it clearer rather than have sometimes 3 zones, space of 3 properties along Route 1. Try to address that. Some of the detail in the residential districts. Again, we've identified the purposes of the districts, the principal uses and structures that are permitted, then the accessory uses and structures. So for example, principal use would be a house, an accessory use could be a home occupation, could be a bed and breakfast, or an accessory structure could be a detached garage. So you would find all of these things identified in the table and also the area and dimensional standards that would apply. So since most of the land in Guilford is owned residentially, we hope that this structure will help people find what they need to know quickly in terms of the regulations. We modified some of the area and dimensional requirements and also added some new provisions related to affordable housing, conservation development design, residential development, etc. In terms of the business districts uses, the subparts of section 4 are very similar, laid out within each of the zoning districts. So the subparts of this zone are the different zoning districts. Are you in a business mixed use zone? Are you in an industrial district, etc.? But again, we've used the use categories here to help explain to people what's permitted. We also have some special districts in Guilford, and those provisions are a little bit different than the basic business, industrial, and residential districts. So those provisions are laid out in this section 5. For example, the Church Street Overlay District, Gateway Overlay District, the Coastal Area Management Overlay District has been created, tried to simplify and organize the requirements for coastal site plans, which anybody in the coastal area is familiar with in terms of what's required with that, and laid that out in this section. Oops, apologize, skipped the slide there. This chapter, section 6, is use-related provisions. So for example, in the use tables, if it says that, looking at some of the categories here, fences and walls. Fences and walls are permitted accessory use subject to the requirements of section 6.3. So you would refer here to section 6.3 and find the details, sometimes including graphs about what's permitted, etc. And again, it just simplifies the regulations rather than repeating the same text in all of the residential zones 8 times. We've organized it here, and that will also make it easier to maintain in the future, we believe and hope. The standard section of the regulation is for a lot of professionals, the key elements that they're going to need to work on. Standards includes things like signage, parking, landscaping, stormwater management, erosion and sediment control, sidewalks, accessibility, corner visibility, and other regulations as well. So this is kind of the inner workings sometimes of the zoning regulations in terms of how sites would be designed and developed. The standard section, again, I've touched on sort of the highlights here of some of the major sections. We've gone through and looked at the parking standards to try to right size them for what's going on these days in terms of parking demand and parking needs. We've updated provisions related to landscaping, lighting, stormwater management. For those of you familiar with drainage issues with the current regulations, we were relying on some documents from some years ago with regard to what's called LID, or low impact development. We've updated those standards for the current state of the art in Connecticut, trying to address drainage issues on sites, etc. Section 8 is what we call here special provisions, and this includes some kind of unique things in a set of zoning regulations. We've added a new section 8.1, which provides provisions related to solar and wind energy activities on particular sites, and also related to some side yard exceptions or yard exceptions for insulating existing buildings that may already intrude into a setback. Standards related to non-conforming uses of buildings, the regulation of management, excavation, fill and grading, communication antennas and facilities, and similar types of uses and activities. Procedures is the section we want everybody to get to as quickly as possible, because this tells you what you need to do to get approval for what it is that you want to do. We broke this up into sort of the different levels or hierarchy from the most simple approval. And there are things in the regulation where it indicates no permits required, so you don't have to come and see Jamie and get the smile at the counter at town
Yes,
hall,
the
right?
civil smile.
The civil smile, there you go. But some things do require zoning permits, and that's laid out in staff procedures. Then we have an opportunity for pre-application reviews with the commission. And then the type of applications that would also involve the commission are a site plan approval, special permit application, an amendment to the regulations, an amendment to the zoning map, and then the zoning board of appeals. And what would happen is later on, for example, is a flow chart. So if this is your first time applying for an approval, you can read the regulation and look at the flow chart and now start to understand how this will unfold as part of your application going forward. We also added a section at the end, which we call procedural elements. And this is what we say that there might be notification to the regional council of government. The provisions are there. It says in that section that there might be a sign required. Again, that provision is laid out, and then all of those procedure sections relate to that. So those are the provisions in here. And again, our hope and desire is that this will facilitate the commission's process in the future. So we're now at the point where we're looking forward to public input and public comment. Just to reiterate, the commission is considering adoption of the regulations. So we look forward to the opportunity to inform, educate, discuss the regulation, what's being proposed. We're certainly receptive to new ideas. So if you have alternatives to what's being proposed, please let us know that. That'd be very helpful. We're all trying to do what we think is best for Guilford. And you can help us along that journey. And your input's going to be very important to us. We weren't sure how many people were going to show up here tonight. So our conceptual approach overall tonight is that if people could be cognizant of perhaps taking up to about 3 minutes per speaker, give us an overview of your thoughts and comments. We can circle back and give people a second shot, or if you're almost about to wrap up, please let us know that. But we'd like to give everybody here in the room and online an opportunity to speak tonight. If you have written testimony, please go ahead and submit that. We've been keeping track of the information we've gotten so far, but it would allow us to take your comments, use that effectively. Statements of what you're in favor of and concerned about are the most helpful. It's not likely that we're going to get into a give and take tonight in terms of a discussion or question and answer session. So this is the reverse of the Jeopardy. You have to give your answer in the form of a question. Tonight, what we're hoping is you'll give us your answer, not in the form of by telling us what your thoughts and feedback are. We're planning on tabulating all of the comments for the commission in a spreadsheet or formats like this. So that even though each of you may have different comments on different ideas, we're going to put them all together and organize it for the commission to give them to review it overall. So again, just some suggestions. The most helpful guidance that you can give us is you're in favor of something else, or you're opposed to something because, or you're concerned about something because. That'll help us really understand what your thoughts and concerns are, and be the most effective communication. We do anticipate the regulations will continue to be adjusted or amended over time. Regulations are not like a Bible that they're going to be fixed for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, whatever. Our goal here is the major changes in the statutes in the last 2 years. We had to adjust what we were doing as a result of that. There's legislature still in session for about another 3 or 4 weeks, and there may be things that are going to come out of that as well that we're going to have to adapt to. I think our approach is continual improvement in the regulations. We look forward to your thoughts and input. So with that, Mr. Chairman, back to you for.
I just got one comment, and maybe this is something I should know, but I thought something we had talked about early on in this process was to, as the new regulations go online and are on the town website, will there be interactive links? So if there's a reference within a section of the code to another section, will someone be able to navigate quickly to that other section?
Yes, what we're anticipating is that the pages have essentially been laid out with sidebars here on the page. We anticipate that every page will have click links to other sections. So in the middle of it, if you say, oh, I really need to go look at section 7 or section 6, you'll be able to do that. Don indicates the other sections of the regulations. Our goal and desire, if it says, you know, you're looking at a permitted use, it says in accordance with section 6D, section 6D is going to be a hyperlink. You just click on it there and you go right to where you need to do. And you say, well, I need more information, you can back up, etc. Now, we've been tag teaming with Jamie and Nigel and the staff in terms of the regulations. So it's been given to me with the thumbs up to go ahead and put the hyperlinks in. So it's something that will happen before adoption and effective date. It may or may not be complete by the end of the public hearing process. But our goal is to get the regulations configured. Now the hyperlinks are easy to create, but it is our intent to create a user-friendly active document. And that is something I've been given the green light on at this point.
Which is one of our main goals, more user friendly, so that having an online use of the new code is essential.
I think that it is, and with the technology that people have, even on their phones tonight at the meeting, if these are the regulations, you could actually go to them, look around and click link on your phone, and everybody has access to the information. Historically, it was a printed book.
You're gonna need a big phone.
You're gonna have to look at a lot of pages on your phones. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I did want to mention, and kind of to follow up, Glenn, these regulations have been up since April 13th. The draft regulations have been up on the website since April 13th, and we've been collecting comments in that since that time. Well, how many comments are we up to now on the website?
Great question. So for those of you that were on our Engage site, we've received about 30 plus memos. And there is a kind of digital space cap that we've hit on that site. So if you want to see all of the comments, I ask that you go to the Planning and Zoning Commission site and click on, I hope you're all coming with me here on this one. Actually, I'm not quite sure. Zoom is, give me Zoom audience. There we go. If you navigate to boards and commissions and then the Planning and Zoning Commission, you'll arrive at the Planning and Zoning Commission's Agenda Center. This was the Engage site that I had referenced earlier. You're coming with me on this too. We've hit a cap there, so we'll just redirect you to the Planning and Zoning page. And here you can find all of the comments in this materials link. And this is where we will continue to add all the comments that we received. If you navigate to the regulations public comments, you'll see each of them there.
Thank you, Jamie. And then also to reiterate something Glenn mentioned during his presentation is that all those comments that we received to this point are going to go onto that spreadsheet that Glenn demonstrated. That spreadsheet will, and then any comments that we hear tonight, and if we go to a second night as well, those will also be added to that spreadsheet, and all of that will be presented to the commission in a following meeting after the public hearing has been closed. So as long as the public hearing is open, we will continue to take comments. We'll continue to add to that spreadsheet, and we'll continue to add to what's going to eventually be presented to the commission. Anything else, Jamie, before we open up for public comment? So again, just to reiterate, we're just I'm not gonna ask for or against, I'm just gonna ask for public comment. We can, if you're for or against it, it'll be clear in your comments. And again, please, try to keep your discussion to 3 minutes. If we have extra time, then we'll have opportunity to circle back. But I think we have a sign-up sheet that we use for the room here. And then we'll try to sprinkle in Zoom as well. So if you have a question or a comment that you want to make on Zoom, please go ahead and raise your hand and we'll sprinkle in some of Zoom as well. So Jamie, do you have someone who wants to speak first? Here in the audience, you can just project and everyone should be able to hear you. You don't have to come to a microphone or anything like that. When you are about to start your comments, please state your name and your address, please, and then go for it.
Would you like to start in the physical room?
Sure,
or
we'll start with the
virtual
first on
space?
your list there.
Okay, Mr. Dirk Gust.
First of all, I'd like to thank the code writers for changing the four building requirements on 6.11.1. Said with single family residential dwellings and lots. I was looking at regulation on previous coverage.
Pervious or impervious? Pervious.
Maximum impervious coverage. Impervious, yes. And basically, it allows non-conforming lot to use the standards for the nearest lot size. Same with maximum living area. I think that's very good. And it's this is based on similar to the Greenwood regulation. I guess my only question is, there's a whole bunch of legal non-conforming lots that resulted when the R8 zone was extended on top of R5 subdivisions. In fact, open space subdivision or 5 subdivisions, it's included with lots. And I'm curious, instead of having to submit on every case, every report documents about the legal non-conforming status, can you just identify those sections of town where this is going to happen?
Great suggestion. Thank you.
For example, in east side of Gilbert, we have like on Foxwood Road South, Foxwood Road North, we have open space subdivisions that developed under R5 rules, but then R8 was provided. And it's difficult to go to ZBA, when you want to add a minor structure, because the R8 code prevents you from doing something. Lots of design and data design. So rather than individually going into that sort of just group, identify.
So we're talking about making it harmonious, so it's not conflicting, right?
Right, and I think this does that. It's a good thing. It's just that rather on a case by case basis, I'm saying there's whole areas of town where now non-conforming lots are created by taking everything on it. Rather have to make a case with each of these. It seems like there should be a classification.
The regulations are crafted so that it's automatic.
Well,
You are a non-conforming lot in the R8 zone because you were approved under the R5 district. The standards for the R5 district or the closest lot size to what you are the provisions that apply in that zone. So every one of the dimensional tables in section.
Friendly reminder.
I just want you to procedural process.
Duly noted.
And then finally, I'm kind of tickled by the RV language here. So basically, you can own an RV, but you can't camp on your own property. I'm wondering if that's really the intent here.
That's interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Miss Sarah Williams.
Do I need to go up there?
I'm just gonna ask the audience on virtual audience, can you hear if a speaker stays in their seat? David Grigsby is giving me the no.
Yeah.
Okay, Sarah, I'll ask you maybe to,
Come on, is the microphone on the computer?
it's meant to be in the full room, but David, if you can hear me clearly, perhaps this is the best seat for speakers.
And just, if in doubt, just yell.
Okay. I didn't come with a specific thing to say. I want to make sure that all the comments and letters I wrote you guys at home, and I'm sorry, I was building it over time as I came to understand the regulation. But I just wanted to let you know that I think there are more and more people now. I know it's late in the game, we've had a million meetings, but who are coming to understand it. I think think there's not a great way for the public who is not in the building to look at the regulations and fully understand it. And so I would just say, at first, that there should be another public hearing after this, now that more people are tuning into it. And maybe an effort to better articulate what the actual changes are in a summary document rather than saying this is what we have changed to. So if, we might need several lines to include all the things that I'm sorry. But it took me a long time just to follow up and figure out who guys are way ahead of me. So thank you for all your time. But I think there's some concerns about the density issue and population of lot sizes and those areas and all of that. The public may have to understand.
Thank you. Excellent. Mr. Peter Palumbo.
Sign the wrong sheet.
Oh, sign wrong. Okay. I also see it. Would you like to speak?
Well, I wasn't planning to. I'm Christine Rubendenz, 221 Fish Hill Road, Milton, Connecticut. And I am in favor of adopting the regulations, especially with respect to the affordable housing provisions and some of the other changes that have been made, because we do have not just a local to Guilford housing crisis, but a crisis throughout the state and throughout the country. And I think the kind of housing, residential diversity in housing stock that we need will help keep this a very healthy, vibrant, and thriving community. So there's a lot, it'll help our workforce find homes, it'll help our seniors age in place, you know, I you know, speak on that from personal experience, not just having read it off. But I know there are more and more families who are, you know, having children stay at home much longer in their 20s and 30s because they can't find places to live. It's kind of hidden from view, but I don't know anybody who hasn't been, you know, the other one who paid the cost. That's my 2 cents.
Should we jump up to Lena Paval?
Thank you.
Yep, we can hear you. Oh, you're muted again now, Lena. Oh, muted again. There you go.
Okay,
Please.
thank you, thank you. I just have a question regarding the PowerPoint that was shown earlier. So on the PowerPoint was reflected a section 7. And in that section 7, which was just an outline, there was one of the lines, the verbiage was eliminate, I think it was eliminate performance standards. If you could go back to that, could someone tell me what performance standards we are eliminating?
Maybe Rob. Looks for that.
Yeah, sure, we can take some. So, Lena, we're gonna let Glenn get himself organized to answer your question.
Okay,
If you don't mind, we'll jump to somebody else
sure, thank you.
here in the room. We'll let you follow up, Lena, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Back to the room. Mr. Joe Gaudier.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity. My name is Joe Gaudier. I'm here with my partner, Cody Ray, and we are the developers of Equity Homes on 405 Woodville Street. And there is 3 sections of the proposed zoning changes that we are concerned with. The first being, the definition of buildable lands. The second being the definition of an acre. And the final one is the affordable housing. All 3, our opinions, will have the effect of diminishing supply of housing in the community. From a developer perspective, we take a deep dive into some analytical framework. I think some of the things we see in our opinion, is very generalized and, specifically in the affordable housing, it seems to be mimicked after some of the towns to the southwest in Connecticut that have completely different zoning regulations and infrastructure that would, like for instance, in the southern part of Stamford, thousands and thousands of apartments have been built over the last 20 years, which makes the provision for housing, or affordable housing, very doable. I would be concerned in a community like Guilford, without the proper infrastructure, that whether the objectives of creating more affordable housing could be achieved. And again, in our opinion, I think with some of these proposed regulations, you'll end up with the unintended result of having less housing, which obviously is contrary to the goal of creating affordable housing. So thank you for the time tonight.
Hey, Jamie.
Yes,
I'm hearing from people that are on Zoom that they're not able to hear very well, like 4 of them.
okay. I would ask maybe for those in the audience who want to speak, David, if you could give me a thumbs up that you can hear me clearly, then this is the seat where I think people should speak from.
I can hear generally the people at the table. I can certainly hear you, Jamie, but any members from the audience, it is muffled and hard to hear.
So perhaps we should have people project that way then.
Thank you. Yep, or sit here, whatever you prefer.
I think the other thing that does also help if you would speak standing up, because it opens your diaphragm, you project actually just a little bit more. So I think, no, nobody has to say, but I think it would help as well.
Where are the microphones?
Jamie, it's Gary McElhenney, if you can hear me. You might also suggest that people on Zoom that aren't speaking mute themselves, because we're also picking up sort of general background noise, which is impacting the ability to hear the speakers.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna jump back to Lena Pavel's question about performance.
So section 273-47B of the existing oops, oh, hang on, sorry. There we go. 273-45 of the current regulations identifies performance standards for non-residential uses. These are provisions related to dust, dirt, fly ash, smoke, odors, gases, fumes, noise, waste, vibration, and dangerous materials. Most of these issues are now thoroughly covered by health regulations, by DEP and others. So these are regulations which came from a much earlier time. We already have provisions in effect, again, for non-residential uses and the types of environmental impacts that might occur as part of that.
So that's more of a part of the reorganization process.
I think based on this comment, I made a note of it. We're going to go back and look at it and make sure that
It's not that they're necessarily eliminated, it's just they're found in a different section.
yes, or they may be organized differently. So again, she's looking at the summary of major changes.
Yeah.
And so we're going to want to check that also the
All right, and could
Basic
you
regulations.
provide me, if those are in health standards, could you provide me a copy of that somehow? Or tell me what sections I could find it in?
I think if you start at section 273-45 in the existing regulations, that'll get you started on that journey.
You mean it cites which health standards? It's gonna cite them? Where can I find these regs that say what those standards are?
I think I'd urge you to start with the health department.
I'm sorry?
I'd urge you to start with the health department.
Okay. And, okay, and the section you cited once again is?
It's the current zoning regulations, section 273-45.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's have one more from the audience here and then we'll take David.
Miss Robin Camper.
Okay,
I
this
think
way?
you should turn and project that way, yeah.
Yes, hi, I'm Robin Tempo, 579 Lake Drive. I am concerned about section 6.11B, the affordable housing, has to be
opportunity of the planning and zoning to be able to decide on citing anywhere in town and concerned our issues has the impact of such dense housing in sensitive areas that are thoroughly examined. Additionally, have we looked at, again, comparing, using Stanford as a model, or not Stanford, or non-urban community, all the density impacts on the town. I'm not sure if a growth study has been done, how fast, with these changes, have any kind of studies been done about how fast the growth will happen and what is the impact on the town? Is there any information on that? There's a lot of concern about this environmentally. For the town, that we don't know all of the impacts and environmental and other issues that go with it. Additionally, I also tried to calculate the sustainable issues in the solar and the wind, which we already have solar fast track permitting, which is great. But has the community looked at other sustainable issues in construction as the planning and zoning? And we push things like that forward. Has it been looked at? Is it possible to do? And I just like to see more of that in our planning and zoning. Thank you.
David Grigsby, did you want to?
Well, my first quick observation is that I couldn't really understand what Robin said. So for at least from my perspective as a Zoom participant, I can mostly hear people at the table, but I can't really hear any of the comments from the public so far. I mean, I know that they're speaking. It's just a matter of it's quite muffled and distorted. So I'm fairly confident it's English, but I don't know exactly what the words are.
Sure, thank you. Thanks for that. I think everyone's going to do the best they can to speak up and make sure everyone can hear, but at the same time, we are chronicling every comment that we get. And it'll be, those comments are all available for everyone to view through the website that Jamie pointed out earlier in the presentation. So we'll try to at least make sure that you were able to go back and read through the comments later.
But may I suggest, this is Larry for the commission, that they come and sit in your seat or in Jamie's seat to make the comments. I mean,
That's a good point. I think the microphone on your computer.
Yes,
is-
that was my
is
earlier
conveying-
suggestion. I welcome my seat to anyone who would like to take it.
Sure, that's fine.
Or you can just spin your computer and.
It's okay if we can sit here.
Don't show that.
Yeah, that's.
All right, David, did you have a comment that you wanted to go through?
Well, I'll make a general comment and observation that I think Sarah Williams may have articulated, but I wasn't sure because I couldn't hear her clearly. That in all candor, I anticipate that most people in the community don't fully understand or appreciate the potential impact or the breadth of the changes that these new zoning regulations involve. I think it was initially sold to the community as we're going to do some, relatively minor bookkeeping, editing, clarifications. I think I missed the agenda item where it said we're going to double density in large portions of the downtown area. I wasn't aware of that, and the summary of major changes is very broad and non-specific, simply saying, oh, we mentioned something about affordable housing, we mentioned something about planned residential developments. I don't think that's the same as people appreciating. I'd love to hear Glenn articulate to me maybe more fully the incentive housing development section, which talks about residential units up to 20 units per acre within a mile of the train station, which is pretty much all of the downtown. And the draft regulations red line edits, they weren't edits against the existing regulations, or if they were, they didn't come through clearly in terms of formatting. I don't think people fully appreciate how significant some of these changes are, which is why I think it's imperative that the commission hold this hearing open to allow these changes to be more fully digested by the community. That's my general observation for now. I'll let other people speak for now.
Great. Jamie, do you have anyone else on the list here? for-
You, and I'm going to be reading over. And I'll ask Mr. Russell Campaign to come up and speak.
3 minutes, Russ.
Oh. You can have MJ's 3 minutes. then.
No, no, I haven't started the timer yet.
Well, if you're speaking for
Introduce
4.
yourself.
Russell Campaign, 131 Boston Street. I want to first open and say how grateful I am that everyone has put in such an extremely heroic effort to take on this undertaking of rewriting the zoning that has just been edited and modified, and it just was a train wreck, is a train wreck. So I really am so anxious and so pleased that we're going to have something, a document that's clear, concise, consistent, predictable, something that you can really plan on and be assured that what you're reading is how it's going to be interpreted. It's not going to be on the shoulders of the planner or zoning enforcement officer on the historic application of how they interpreted something. It's going to be there, and it's going to be real and predictable. So the zoning side of this effort, I applaud, and I think is really top notch. It's going to be consistent. It's going to be something that's going to, I think, avoid lawsuits, and it's going to streamline the process and hopefully provoke some creative ideas being brought to Guilford, which we need. It's the planning side that concerns me a little bit, as far as how transparent and public and sort of philosophical discussions about what the intent of the changes that are embedded in the zoning are. I have not witnessed it, and I've tried very hard to participate to my best as I could as a professional and a community member to understand and foresee the reasoning behind why certain adjustments are being made, and that there's a full understanding and appreciation of the implications of those changes as to how they're going to play out. I've run into community members and had completely polar opposite takeaways on what the implications of this rewrite are. Some people think that there's huge density increases in this, but the reality of the situation is septic, wetlands, stormwater, all these other underlying changes that have occurred are actually going to, in my opinion, severely limit the density within this town. I'm not seeing that there's many applicable places that you can get 20 units per acre anywhere within a mile of the train station. It's just not there. So you're throwing things in that haven't been analyzed in a way, get people riled up and really concerned, or maybe even excited, but aren't analyzed and reviewed and documented in a way that the planning side of this effort should be, in my opinion, to forecast, is this what the town wants? And that's why there's so many complaints that the summary page is an afterthought. It shouldn't have been an afterthought. It should have been a pre-thought. The summary page should have been written before the goals. I mean, you know, in other words, the goals are being set as to what you're trying to accomplish. How much density do we want? Where do we want it? How does it impact the ability for affordable housing units? How much is affordable? How much is market rate, but smaller in scale and maybe more accessible? So that's, in summary, just my general side of this, is that I feel that there wasn't the planning side. There's the zoning side is great and all right there. It's all these little changes, and I've tried to document some of the ones I've caught, but I don't have the data to be able to foresee how these. I don't have the site data. I don't have the cost data. One of the things that I learned, like for instance, on the 12% fee in lieu, was that you've been referencing the building permit costs. It doesn't say that. It references the costs.
No, I can confirm that we are not referencing building permit costs.
Okay,
It's
so then you need to
declared cost
clarify.
of Construction.
Declared cost of construction. Well, that is a very different way of applying that fee, probably a factor of 4 or 5 in the relationship of when you're analyzing it. And how are you going to get the declared cost of construction? There's no model. Stanford has a model. They have it written into their zoning. So there's a lot of questions, and I just don't know how. And like, for instance, I would ask you to read the stormwater regulations in relation to that application that we all support. We want the chargers there. That would have a full blown into a special permit reconstruction for full-blown stormwater analysis on that property for those 2 units, to be added. That's $10,000, $15,000 worth of engineering, and I can't hire an engineer. I wait 6 months to get an engineer to do the smallest wetland applications. You gotta think about the implications of this, and I don't feel that they've been discussed, and I have not participated in it, and I'd love to. So that's thank you for the overtime.
Thank you also for, like, I know that there are 19 pages, but they're all good points. So,
Somebody else from the audience here?
Come to the microphone, make sure
Please, thank you.
I get actually heard.
Good evening, Keith Bishop, 25 Meadow Ridge Lane, here in Guilford. Thanks for the record. Thank you to the commission for your diligence over time from one town planner to another. And unfortunately, this work will be passed that you'll have to deal with here. And it does sound like in that passing that this is going to then also face some other pieces of the puzzle the commission needs to deal with staffing and taking that next piece. But that's a separate piece I know you're going to be dealing with. So I appreciate the diligence that has been done and put forth here. I've got one memo in that I put in. It was on wind energy, and in one sense, some rhetorical questions. Wind energy itself is not something that is very economically viable in most locations, but height is an issue that needs to be with most wind. And where you're limiting it with a definition, I think it's detrimental visual impact is a subjective term that's put into your wordings in the proposed regulations. So whose detrimental visual impact are we referring to? Is a new style turbine that sits on the edge of a building, and I reference to that in my letter. Again, there's a lot of experimental things out there and the different ways you can turn around, change, moving kinetic stuff into energy. You're not thinking about all those things that then your regulations can be thwarting or not allowing to happen as they have a national policy to have more renewable energy. And where's that located and how is it close to the source so it doesn't need to be traveling and can be virtually net metered, which means that it's right behind the meter on your property as opposed to having to pay transmission charges to get it in overall economic reasons. So that's a quick one on the wind. Second, a side note here, a comment was made on RVs and the housing and residential zones. In my opinion, there's many RVs around that don't look very attractive in residential zones, yet they're allowed to be there 365 days a year, essentially. Who's counting whether they're gone a week or whatnot. However, you don't allow trucks to be parked temporarily overnight by somebody who then is, in employment, stopping back over. I've done that many times where I have a load and I'm out and I'm park the truck in the front driveway overnight for 6 or 8 hours and then I'm gone. So technically that's illegal. It's around have a commercial truck park in a residential zone, but you let an RV that's even more unsightly remain for year round. Third, 6.1 farming. I appreciate all the efforts that are put into that, and I know additional comments and feedback. The commission has weighed in on that, and that was one of the first groups of people that weighed in, and we had some sessions there, thankfully, to the staff. The next one is 5.8 plan development districts and the overlay zones. That language I think is very well put and modeled after other towns, and I'll comment further on that and so I wrap up here. So the next piece, I laud Russ's comments on the planning aspect of it, and there's a lot of details that he knows that he's appreciating on that side of the planning piece of it. I'm looking at practical things from a landowner, farmer aspect of actually code and ones for applications different from being, a developer and a master planner. But with that said, you spent much time on the process here, and it's time to pull the trigger. And delays will continue to cost people in this town that have come before you, that had applications that have been turned down. Say wait, because now we have the special overlay zoning in particular. It's coming, that's going to be the applicable place to come forward to us. Our family business was turned down last year. Most of Ron sat through that for a zone change, and the applicable section is 5.8 for that plan district. So we want to come back with concepts and ideas on that fairly quickly. And also there are things on our farming operation that are now in the farming section that are allowed that aren't currently allowed or require different way of handling. And so those things for us are costly to continue to delay this. And if it delayed beyond July 1st, then we've got significant issues for our operation and what we're planning for. So with that said, I would urge you, if this is going to be a delayed change and the request for continuing the hearings goes beyond one more meeting and you can't come to an appropriate decision to actually pass them, then I would urge you to adopt specifically sections 5.8 and 6.1 and 6.2 on farming. They said those supersede all things in the code existing on those particular items so that people can come forward with those particular applications here and keep the commercial people that have overlay zone requirements moving ahead on their project. And then the last question, and Glenn or Jamie can answer it later. I wasn't clear as far as what the process is when you put these changes together. Will this trigger changes that will require additional public hearing and notice of a complete change in another 65 days notice and going through that again with the wording changes that will be coming forward? And if that's the case, then it'll be sad timeframe that I just referenced as well. So thank you very much for your continued diligence and hard work. And Jamie, yes, I was on many sessions and
Yes, thank you.
learned a lot, and we'll stay on the current commission that I'm on because it's a much quieter place with less activity.
Thank you.
All right, let's move to Zoom. Sarah Shrewsbury.
Hi, everybody. Sarah Shrewsbury, 400 Drive, Guilford, Connecticut. I first want to say thank you very much to the committee and to the planners. Obviously, this has taken a long time and you've gone through a tremendous amount of work. And I appreciate everybody's volunteer or paid work. I will say that I am concerned about, as was stated by Russ Campaign, and I think a little bit by David Grigsby, that the summary page is not as informative as it needs to be. And I think that there's a lot of confusion about what the changes mean and what are the changes specifically from the old document to the new document. And as Russ said, why are these changes? So it's like, if we could just see it even in a spreadsheet, this is what the original language is, this is what we're changing it to, and this is why we think the newer language is better. Just a spreadsheet of the general, not line by line, but generally speaking, these are the major overall changes. I think that's what the public wants to see. And I don't think the public feels comfortable saying, yeah, we're behind this until they get that. Thank you.
Very much. Got a couple more stacked up, so let's go to David Grigsby. Do you have another one comment? Or we'll get back to round two. You've already had your time, if that's all right.
I do have some more specific, but if other people haven't spoken yet, yes, please, let them go.
Thank you. Kevin McGee.
All right, I'm on. So I got, for the Conservation Commission, I have the letter which they want me to, even though you have it in front of you, but there's other people who haven't seen it.
Hey, Kevin, could you speak up, please?
Yep, move my computer a little closer here. How's that?
That's great. Thank you.
So I'm here, and the first letter I have is for the Conservation Commission. I got submitted today, but I know a lot of people in the room and other people aren't seeing the letters here too easily. So the Conservation Commission letter dated May 16, 2023 to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Dear members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Guilford Conservation Commission over the past year has been reviewing the draft planning and zoning regulation. The commission submitted a January 25th, 2023 letter to the Planning and Zoning Commission regarding the proposed zoning changes. In reviewing the April 13th, 2023 updated draft, the commission appreciates the inclusion of the draft regulations in the lighting portion of the regulations and that the R5 district has been added back to the conservation subdivision, and that the definition for buildable area and developable area are added to the regulations. The Conservation Commission has concerns that the developable land definition was only applied to the conservation subdivision and not to other multifamily developments. The concept of developable land is important in protecting the natural resources of Guilford by preventing overdevelopment of the upland portion of the properties, which can impact the land adjacent to inland wetlands, tidal wetlands, watercourses, steep slopes. Without these definitions, developers are allowed to calculate the density of the property by multiplying a number of units per acre by the total size of the property, which can include watercourses and steep slopes and wetlands. This then allows the property to be built at a higher density in the uplands portion of the property and resulting in increase in pervious surface within the development and limited buffers to the inland wetlands, tidal wetlands, watercourses, and cause adverse impacts to these natural areas. The Conservation Commission is requesting that the Planning and Zoning Commission, as part of the zoning regulations, include the definition of developable land as part of the density calculation for the conservation subdivision, planned residential developments, incentive housing projects, and multi-unit housing developments. And this is signed by Janet Ainsworth, who is the chair of the Conservation Commission. And I have my list, a little shorter than that one there, because Conservation Commission took all the information. So from Kevin McGee in front of the planner to the Planning and Zoning Commission, proposed zoning regulations update. Developable area, I'm in agreement with the Conservation Commission letter dated May 16, 2023 regarding the need for developable land definition to apply to the number of units for conservation subdivision, planned residential, incentive housing projects, multi-housing units developments. As noted by the Conservation Commission, this concept of developable land is important in protecting the natural resources of Guilford by preventing overdevelopment on the upland portion of the properties, resulting in increase in impervious surface, limited green space, and reduced buffers. Also, concern regarding coastal area management, in section 5.7b.2, coastal jurisdiction line should be added to the critical resource list for measuring setback distances. This is something that we do, but it's not really in the regulations. So that kind of needs to be added to that list there. And I think it's probably a grammatical change to the regulations there. Second one is 5.7b in coastal regulations 2D, site improvements related activities should require coastal site plan reviews for all activities up to 50 feet of a coastal resource. The construction work, the installation of a swimming pool, tennis courts could have adverse impacts to the resources without the proper review of soil and erosion control methods. Within these areas, the regulations only have restrictions of 25 feet from the coastal resource, and the 25 feet is a very small distance. It's the length of a car. So it's the only area that would be reviewed by coastal resources, and I think there's major work that can happen within 50 feet, which can definitely impact a wetlands area or the or tidal wetlands or beach area and stuff. So those are my comments and the comments from the Conservation Commission regarding the updates, and appreciate your consideration of those.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. Do you have a list for here in the audience?
Yep, Mr. Michael Scott.
Thank you very much. Michael Scott, 593 Thomas Park Road. I submitted comments in writing earlier this week, so I don't want to repeat myself too much, other than I did look in a little more detail. My concerns tonight are regarding the consolidation of the multiple zones into the Post Road Business Zone and the Business Mixed Use Zone, which is essentially encompasses the entire length of Route 1 from the Branford line to the Madison line. And I commend the need to simplify those zones and also to recognize that there could be some sort of continuity across Route 1, but it is nevertheless an important aspect of our town. It is our gateway, and it's something that likely we all experience every day of our lives. And similar to some comments that were said earlier, I'm concerned that the zoning is preceding the planning. I'm not aware of an updated vision for Route 1 that is supported by the zone changes and the bulk standards that are stipulated in the proposed DMU and PRB zones. And I would caution you against accepting a bunch of mathematics and things that uses that could potentially just be site plan approvals that satisfy those bulk standards, but nevertheless yields a result that none of us would be very satisfied with. We'll just continue to remind you that this pretty much is the entire length of Route 1 with the redrafting of these two zones. Among the bulk standards that I find questionable is the housing density that's being stipulated for these two zones, which is 6 units per acre, which strikes me as a relatively high number. I'm only aware of 3 housing developments in town that meet or exceed 6 units per acre. The only 4 I can find are the Spaceship on Whitfield, the Church Street development right across the street from Adams, the relatively newish development at the end of Westlake on Route 1, and the Fair Street condos are exactly 6 units per acre. While any one of those may be good models of dense housing development, I'm not sure as a town we're ready to accept that amount of density from the Branford line to the Madison line. And if you adopt these codes, yes, you will have to perk septic, and yes, you will have to meet the stormwater codes, but that's the line that we're establishing for potential developers. I just want to see the physical plan that would illustrate the positive nature of that. I commend all of the efforts, but I would caution us as a town from accepting incentives or bulk standards that we ourselves have not sufficiently convinced ourselves are satisfactory. We deserve the best developments without a doubt, and that those developments must support our priorities and values, and that as a community is what we should expect. So thank you for that. Thank you.
That's it for in-person minutes.
Okay. We'll go back around to anyone who wants to speak further. David Grigsby, are you prepared?
I will speak on another discrete section, which is the conservation development section 3.5. As best I can tell, previous language that required that any open space that was being dedicated needed to be proportionally similar to the amount of wetland, steep slope of the overall parcel, so that essentially a developer wasn't saying, well, here, look, I'll give you 5 acres, which happened to be 5 acres of wetlands that couldn't be developed anyway. Was that deliberately excised from section 3.5? And if so, can someone articulate why?
Not at this moment, David.
We'll look into it further, David.
Okay, all right, well, that's a significant concern in my mind. because what you're doing is providing, particularly since this new section 3.5 literally doubles the density that had previously existed. And yet taking away the protection of making sure that at least some of the open space that was being dedicated wouldn't have been developed anyway. That's a significant concern. As far as I can tell, there's no language in 3.5 that says to whom the open space should be dedicated. At least in the old section, there was a reference back to the subdivision regulations, which I think is relevant, but right now I didn't see anything in 3.5 that talked about who to whom land should be dedicated. Again, this makes me concerned about how complete this redraft is being reviewed. The other thing that I'm trying to understand, and it's probably not only in this conservation area, but if we have a whole separate section now, 6.11, which effectively, as I understand it, mandates affordable housing, why in the conservation development section do you have incentives which increases density for open space if somewhere else in the zoning regulations we're already going to mandate? I'm sorry, why would we have incentives to allow for affordable housing in the open space subdivisions when affordable housing is already mandated elsewhere in the regulations? Why give a bonus if it's already going to be required? And I don't think it's necessarily only in the conservation development section, but I think the incentives are kind of a leftover idea from before we proposed having a separate section 6.11 about affordable housing. I'll leave that for now.
Thank you. Like we have Colleen Venter.
Hi, actually, this is John Venter, 582 Towner Swamp Road, Guilford, Colleen's husband. I actually had two questions, but since we're really not doing question and answers, I'll sort of rephrase them as comments. The first being in your draft, you state in the combining of multiple commercial zones to a single BMU zone, that this is being done, quote, so that few uses would be non-conforming. The area and dimensional standards were blended together to be less restrictive. I'm not exactly sure why we're, and again, not knowing the planning and the mission of what the committee was doing, why are we out creating zones that make it that more or less non-conforming applications would be approved, and why are we making it less restrictive? I'm not sure that should be the goal of redrafting our zoning codes. But so I'm making a comment versus a question. I don't think that should be the goal of redrafting zoning. My second question, but now comment, will be also is in regard to the Route 1 West planning report that was done 5 or 6 years ago about Route 1 West, specifically the Sullivan South property, which is being combined into that new BMU zone. Was that Route 1 West report considered at all when the decision was made to put the Sullivan South property in the BMU zone? That's a question, but to answer it rhetorically is it absolutely takes no regard to that Route 1 West report as far as the new BMU zoning, as far as what the report recommends. The recommendations from that report were very clear and absolutely an opposite of what the BMU zoning is going to allow. So I'm not sure why that report was completely ignored. So those are my comments. I don't agree. As you can tell, that Sullivan South property should be included in the BMU zoning because it just doesn't coincide with the report that was put together not too many years ago by your committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone here in the audience that would like to speak further? Dave Grigsby, your hand up.
I do. If we have until 10:30, I've got any number of other questions. One of the other things that I noticed is that it appears like that you eliminated the requirement that a new accessory apartment be the property either be owner occupied in the premises or owner occupied in the accessory apartment. If that was that a deliberate omission or change? And if it were, I would express concern because the idea of allowing somebody to have an accessory apartment is one of the ways that people can start climbing the proverbial rung of the property ladder. And if you allow simply out of state or out of town real estate investors to buy properties and turn the house and the garage into an accessory apartment, you create additional competition for what otherwise would be new homeowners in Guilford. One of the other things I was concerned about was, and again, this may be simply a matter of my experiences on the commission years ago. It used to be a special permit requirement to have or create an accessory apartment. And one of the benefits of that is that you would then have a neighbor who would be notified of the proposed accessory apartment, who would come to the commission and say, hey, that's right next door to my living room. I would like some screening. I would like to make sure that there aren't any lights. I would like to make sure that there's adequate off-street parking, things that the commission wouldn't necessarily know. But if you don't have a special permit for that, and you simply make it a zoning permit, that's simply going to fly under the radar of the zoning commission. And you'll find yourself with neighbors in conflict over something that maybe could have been handled better by coming to a public hearing and saying, here's my concern, and the commission can weigh those concerns and decide whether it needs to weigh in one way or the other. I'm not sure how deeply thought that omission was, but I didn't find it in the zoning regulations.
Do you want to speak to the adopted ADU changes from the state? Briefly,
If you'd like, sure.
just briefly.
Yeah, I mean, so David, Glenn Chelder, our zoning consultant, referenced beginning of the presentation that some of the amendments that you'll find in the draft zoning regulations come from changes in Connecticut general statutes. And that particular change of accessory dwelling units as of right, moving from special permit, was a decision that the commission made to opt into Public Act 21-29, allowing accessory dwelling units in any residential zone.
I'm sorry.
So primary dwelling unit to be done as of right, and we chose as a commission and a town to opt into that. And that has been, since we opted in to that state model regulation, accessory dwelling units have actually been as of right since January 1 of this year.
I'm sorry, what was the statute reference, not the public act?
Public Act 21-29.
Let me go back to that one again. What's the statute reference, not the public act?
Connecticut General Statute 8-20. Yep, I can send it to you.
Okay, so but we opted into that. We weren't required to do that.
We opted in, correct.
Okay.
Yes.
I just want to say the Dirk Goss, Boxer Road South, the open space subdivision format was not a success. There was a single example of it. And the very language that Mr. Grigsby is talking about is part of the reason it was not successful.
Thank you. Anyone else from the audience? And do we have anyone else from the Zoom call? Okay, seeing none, then I'll look to discussion with the commissioners. We thinking that we want to have another public meeting or have another public session on this the next meeting, or do we feel like we've giving ample time to the public to give us their comments.
I feel that based on some of the comments I've heard, I think there may be, and even if it's a possibility that there may be further public engagement, I think we should have another public hearing.
I would say that, you know, a lot of very good questions have been brought up tonight that we'll look into. That I think need and warrant further investigation.
Sure. Well, yeah, again, every comment that's been brought up, it will end up on that spreadsheet that will end up coming to us and will be a full discussion for sure. But yeah, I mean, the idea of having another public hearing.
Are you in favor of another public hearing?
Yes.
Yeah, the idea of having another public hearing is to just continue to have opportunity for people to go on the website and give us their comment through the website, as well as to come to the next meeting and discuss that. Bill?
I think we should have another meeting. You know, this is so important. And there'll be some people who, for various scheduling reasons, wouldn't be able to attend tonight. And I think given the importance of the changes we're making, we should go the extra mile and have one more meeting.
Thanks, Ted. Bill?
I agree.
Kevin?
I agree.
All right, and Jason, you're voting today?
Yeah, I agree too, but I'm thinking I want to urge everyone on here tonight to get the word out to everybody, because having read so many of those letters too, there's many people who feel there hasn't been enough announcement publicly for people in general in the population to participate in this and know what's going on. So if people spread the word for next meeting, that would be important too.
Yeah, take the link from the website and send it out to everyone you can think of. All right, so then I would entertain a motion from the commission to continue this topic to our next meeting, which would be June 7th.
So moved.
Second.
All right.
Russ? Sorry, is that Mike?
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes, right.
What I would love to see is actually some of the debate to be publicly aired of the discussions of these questions and the letters, so that there's documentation and public access to the actual resolutions that are being drawn from these. That's so I'd love to have a public hearing of that.
It will be.
It will be public. It just won't include public comment.
So for example, the developable land argument, I mean, we've heard arguments for and against the
We've heard both
change.
sides of that issue. And
Okay.
it will be discussed. Yeah.
So is that another meeting, or is that at this next public hearing?
That's at another meeting.
At another meeting.
Correct.
Okay, so it'll be a special meeting that you have.
Correct.
before this.
Well, it'll be the special meeting or a regular meeting, one of the
Okay.
two. It'll be fully legally noticed and you can watch or see, and we'll go through the full list of all the questions. And some of them are gonna be no brainers. Glenn's just gonna recommend that we accept the comment. Others will be a discussion.
Right.
So,
But
yeah.
the discussion that Russ is talking about would be after we close the public.
Correct. But
I think, we're in the middle of a legal proceeding under state law in terms of how we would process this. It's almost as if I'm an applicant to the commission for these regulations. The scenario is that I think this goes back to sort of your question, as long as the comments that we have received frame the issue and we make a decision on the regulations that it's sort of within the parameters of what's been brought up, we're okay. If somebody comes up with an idea that says, I think we should, I don't know what, but it hasn't been in the regulations and is outside what the legal notice was, that would cause us, I believe, my recommendation to you would be, we need to reinitiate the adoption of the regulations because we've changed it in a fundamental way. But we could also adopt this and then make that change or take that provision out. So under Connecticut state law, because the commission is applying to itself, is not subject to the same time parameters that a private development would be. In other words, if somebody applies to us, we have to hold a hearing a certain number of days, close it in a certain number of days, act in a certain number of days, so that we don't string applicants along. There's a due process and a distinct time frame. Commission isn't subject to those parameters. We could take more time, not perhaps what Mr. Bishop was suggesting, but we want to do the right thing here. So I think as the chair pointed out, we'll do our analysis and investigation and discuss these issues and see where that leads.
Well, I think there's another point Glenn, you mentioned at the very opening, which is that any adoption that we make of new regulations, consistent to the degree that we can with the public comments that we've received and the debate that we'll have, does not make the changes immutable. It doesn't make it a fact that we cannot revisit things that we find in our purview we should revisit based on public comment and the experience that we have as a commission. So,
Correct. And in fact, another general reason for us doing this update is in previous, with the existing regulations, it's actually kind of difficult to come up with amendments that fit all the different, because our current regulations jump around a lot and it makes it very difficult to create a new amendment. It makes it difficult to change anything. The reason for organizing the new regulations how we have is it makes it easy to add things to it if we need to. It makes it easy to change things if we need to. So that means that we as a commission and our current town planner, and I would imagine our future town planner, will also have the same vision of regular review of how the regulations are doing and perhaps what changes might need to be adjusted on it. So that will be something that we will have as being a value that we will continue going forward.
yeah, the commission will just add two more meetings a month for the commission to do.
We'll just add some more committees, it'll be fine. Okay, so, yes, Keith.
So in light of the process here for the timeline and the consideration of the math behind things that Glenn has done, how that can be on the screen and shown of what is the open space subdivision, what's the hypothetical on, you know, you had diagram of showing, you know, A and B on there. Well, what is the math behind, you know, a parcel that is representative of Guilford and the before and the after? What is the effect upon people who are then saying, you're taking something away from me? I've been in this town for 100 years. I've kept the space, you know, for my family, and now I'm the last and it's gotta be sold. And then the next thing you know, what they've held on to for years, they're finding out if I did it 10 years ago or before regulations changed, I could have gotten 3 lots. Now all of a sudden you're subtracting out a whole bunch of stuff, the wetlands and everything else, and now it's only 2 lots. And they've been banking on, you know, on 3 lots. And that also ties into, you know, affordable housing, the value of lots and how many people can afford to be in Guilford and all that complicated piece. So I guess I'm asking, is this stuff come out in public, not in the roll up your sleeves behind the scene in the workroom at Town Hall South, but that this come forward that you guys, if you're working on it, it has to be in front of a public meeting and it can't be, you know, then taking the work product to somebody else and not really sharing it in a full disclosure in a public meeting of what the pros and the cons of both ways are looking at it.
It's gonna be in a public meeting.
Well, I understand that. I've been on public meetings for 25 years. Just know that what is it that's, you know, comments and things take place behind the scenes in order to do workflows and all they discuss things. And then where is it that you've got working documents that commissions may get materials well in advance of the public and how those are compared to be able to take and come up with working draft notes that actually prepared and put in front of the public. And I know that, you know, people on this commission have spoken in other places about stuff that's going on about if matters that are before you. And I just urge you to be very careful in that regard, that people aren't speaking out of turn on matters that that should be in front of you in public as opposed to behind the scenes for FOI.
Okay. Thank you. All right, there's a motion and a second on the table to continue this to our June 7th. We'll go ahead and vote. Jason Marchi,
Yes.
Kim Clark,
Yes.
Ted Sands,
Yes.
Bill Freeman,
Yes.
Philip Johnson.
Yes.
Sean Cosgrove.
Aye.
And I also vote yes. We'll see everyone on June 7th meeting. We do have a regular meeting, so I urge folks that are here that are gonna stay for the rest of our meetings. I don't know why you wouldn't stay for the rest of the meeting, but if you choose to leave, please try to keep it to a minimum volume. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to the regular meeting. We don't have any pending applications, new applications. Greg Fetus, Fetus Engineering LLC, 230 Water Street, map 32, lot 797, zone MR1. Special permit and posted site plan for additions and modifications to existing marine commercial buildings. Receive and set public hearing for June 7th, 2023, as well as Al Secondino, A Secondino and Son Inc., 441 Boston Street, map 48, lot 52, zone R3, special permit and coastal site plan for an addition connecting the two buildings of an existing daycare business following variance approval. Receive and set public hearing for June 7th, 2023. Do I hear a motion?
So moved. Second.
Thank you, Kevin. Set and, proceed and set. Jason Marchi,
Yes.
Kevin Clark,
Yes.
Ted Sands,
Yes.
Bill Freeman abstains, Phil Johnson,
Yes.
Sean Cosgrove. I will also vote yes. Other commission business, approval of the minutes. Was anyone able to review the minutes from our May 3rd, 2023 meeting? Yes. Thank you. Would anyone like to make a motion approving the minutes? Thank you, Sean. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Kevin. Jason Marchi.
I'm gonna abstain on that.
Thank you. Kevin Clark.
Yes.
Ted Sands.
Yes.
Bill Freeman abstains. Philip Johnson.
I'm gonna abstain because.
Oh, no. Sean Cosgrove. Yes. And I'll also vote yes. Motion carries. All right, Jamie, anything else for us? Would you like to make an announcement? Or no? You gonna make the official
No,
announcement?
I'm announcemented out. I want to thank you
You're
all.
out.
My sincerest gratitude, really, I mean, just bright shining moments in my 1 year and 3 months with the town has been working with you. So I really just appreciate your time and your efforts and your commitment. And want to say, give a special thanks to my staffing.
Well, you know, Jamie, what flight attendant said to the audience before we was what her mother told him, "You're 21, get out."
No, with all sincerity, I do. I appreciated all of your.
Well, we've appreciated yours, and that should be part of the record. We have really appreciated yours.
Wish you the very best.
Thank you.
And Jamie, as a new member, I just want to express how helpful you were, how welcoming you were, and helped me on my learning curve. And I'm forever grateful. Thank you. Good luck.
And Jamie, I also want to reiterate what Matt Hoey said, that you were his single best hire, he feels, and we will certainly miss you, and you're going to be difficult to fill your shoes. So.
All right. There's no other business. I've entertained a motion to adjourn.
Don't move.
Second. Thank you, Bill. All in favor, please say
Aye. Did we do the minutes?
Yes, we did. You abstained.
Man, that was fast. You made the motion.
Yeah, you made the motion.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
And you seconded.
Second.
I was like.